One thing that has been withdrawn, a certain rule, or at least the rule has been changed. But we're going to start by going back to come forward. 10th of August 2014, heading of football is too dangerous for children, says a neuroscientist. Heading of football is too dangerous for children as the force of the ball can cause brain injuries, a top neuroscientist would warn. Children should not head the ball when playing football, a leading expert has said, warning it can cause brain injuries in the young and may affect professional players as well. Keep that in mind. The repeated impact affects a child's neck muscles that are not yet fully developed, and the brain is still immature, meaning it is more vulnerable to damage. Dr. Michael Gray, reader in motor neuroscience at the University of Birmingham School of Sport, Exercise and Rehabilitation Sciences, has said. His comments come after new rules published by the Football Association said it is up to the team doctor to decide when a player should carry on if they can, should come off the field after a blow to the head. Now, we discussed that rule change last year. But several high-profile doctors have warned about children heading footballs after scans have shown apparent damage to the brains of professional players. Jeff Astle would be an example of that, but we're going to come on to that a bit later. His comment... Yeah, it is one of them. However, research and animal experiments have resulted in mixed findings. One study found that 1,000 to 1,500 headers a year, as associated with significant brain injury in footballers, the equivalent to a few times a day. However, experiments on animals have suggested that even 35 concussions over a 2-hour period would not cause damage. Some schools in America have already banned children from heading the ball during games. Keep that in mind. We're coming back to that. And Dr. Gray said, I do not think that children should stop sport. The obesity epidemic means we need to encourage them, but we do need to look at rule changes and the way we train children. Children should not be heading the ball. We don't know at what age the children's necks become strong enough to withstand the movement of the head when the head is struck by the ball. Some of my colleagues have suggested 14, but I really think it is individual. In addition, the brain starts to shake and rotates when the head is struck by the ball. The brain bounces back and forth, and it is the impact of the brain against the inside of the skull that causes additional damage. Jeff Astle, West Bromwich Albion striker, died in 2002 from a brain disease, and the coroner ruled it as an industrial disease, suggesting his profession had caused the damage. A report by MP Chris Bryant and Paralympic gold medalist member of the House of Lords, Baroness Gray Thompson, entitled Concussion Can Kill, calling for a parliamentary investigation into head injuries in sport, and warned that lawsuits could follow. So, published in June of 2014, the report asked if steps can be taken to limit the number of times players head the ball in football, particularly youth players. Now, it's one of them was moving on to the 28th of August 2014. So again, staying back for a bit, that was from the 10th of August 2014. This is from the 28th of August 2014. Millions of young footballers across Britain have dreamed of powering a header past a helpless goalkeeper to win the World Cup for their country. Yet, if a so-called group of soccer mums in the US have their way, the bullet header may be gone from the beautiful game for good. Parents of young players have filed a lawsuit in California against FIFA, accusing the sport's governing body of acting carelessly and negligently and failing to protect young players from the risk of concussion. It calls for a number of new safety rules, including temporary substitutions when a player suffers a head injury and limiting the number of headers for players under 17. Kevin Carpenter, a sports lawyer, said if FIFA loses, it could issue an edict forcing national bodies, including the English FA, to adopt the new rules. He said it would most likely be a global change, so the new rules would of course apply in the UK. The US lawsuit is not seeking monetary damages, but instead calls for former players to be monitored for signs of concussion. That is a very important point there. Attorney Steve Berman, who is representing the group, said he had estimated that a dedicated youth player might sustain 1,000 headers per year. He said the negligence is remarkable given that FIFA actively promotes its activities to children, yet no rule limits headers in children's soccer, and children are often taught to head the ball from the age of 3. Kevin Kilban, former Ireland international player, said British players should not be forced to abide by any new rules set in the US. He said football is a contact sport and you're putting your body on the line, so of course there are risks. A large part of my development as a player was learning how to head the ball properly. It's a real skill. I'm not sure exactly how they would count the number of headers anyway. Several high-profile doctors have warned about children heading footballs after scans have shown apparent damage to the brains of professional players, as we mentioned a second ago. But one of the more interesting things that to move on to November of 2015. Yeah, moving on to November 2015 now. So from August of 2014, with this lawsuit that came up, and also the potential of changing rules, now it is one of them ones where November 9th, 2015, the US Soccer Federation has recommended a ban on headers for players 10 and under, and limits for players between 11 and 13, and having medical professionals rather than coaches make decisions on whether players suspected of concussions can remain in games. Now that's huge. Now, big change. That is a huge change. As part of an announcement that a lawsuit over concussions last year had been settled, which we just talked about, the USSF said it is implementing the changes for US youth national teams and its development academy, which are controlled by the governing body. The USSF, US Soccer Federation, is strongly urging they be adopted by all of its members, which includes youth level entities and American professional leagues not under direct authority of the defendants in the lawsuit. US youth national teams will still be bound by the substitution rules of the events in which they participate, including those of FIFA and CONCACAF. Now, under the new rules, a healthcare professional, HCP, must be present at all development academy matches and will make all decisions regarding head injuries, taking decisions away from coaches. The replacement for a player who leaves the game for a suspected concussion or head injury will not count against the team's total for allowed substitutions. If the injured player is cleared to return by the HCP, he or she must replace the original substitute. A group of youth players and parents sued in August 2014, as we just mentioned, in the US District Court in San Francisco. But US District Judge Phyllis J. Hamilton dismissed the case against FIFA in July, and the USSF and lawyers for the plaintiffs announced a settlement when the rest of the suit was dismissed. Now, the USSF said within 30 days it will announce an initiative to improve concussion awareness, return to play protocols, and substitution rules. The USSF said it had been developing a player safety campaign before the lawsuit. With the development of the Youth Concussion Initiative by US Soccer and its youth members, we feel we have accomplished our primary goal, therefore do not see any need to continue the pursuit of the litigation, Steve Berman, who was the lawyer for the plaintiffs, said in a statement. The USSF said it reached out to the medical community to develop the protocols. In constructing the concussion component, US Soccer sought input from its medical science committee, which includes experts in the field of concussion diagnosis and management, and as well as from its technical advisors, and worked with its youth members to develop a true consensus-based program, Secretary Dan Flynn said. So, it is one of them ones. So, you know what? The interesting part of this, well, there's been a rule change over there. But Gezzie Fizzle, your view on this, and then I'll come in with mine, and if the Skypers want to jump in, feel free.
No, I think it's absolutely huge. And at the same time, you know, head injuries are things that in sport and across all sport, you know, we need to look at much more seriously. Now, as you guys know, I'm a fan of American football and the NFL, and the NFL have very, very interesting concussion protocols at the moment, and you know, they're looking to tighten those up, and those are looking to be more stringent as well. When we look at football now, I have to say that especially for young players, it really does have to be safety first. Now, I know that as a defender and even as a midfielder and as an attacker, you know, heading the ball is very, very important, but we're also talking about making sure that these players, especially the young players, can have longer, healthier careers, right? And one of the ways to do that is to protect them in regards to heading the ball. So I think this is a very good move if we're talking about making sure that younger players are able to have longer careers. The other thing as well to point out in regards to this is it's also crucial in terms of the research, right? Into finding out what the effects of heading the ball over the course of a career would do, right? Because what that would then mean is a change in the technology, a change in how footballs are made, right? It doesn't necessarily mean removing heading from the game, but we can look at how equipment is made and what other things can be done to help protect players as well. So it's absolutely massive, but it's also in line with what's happening with other sports in terms of concussion protocol as well.
I mean, it's one of them ones. I'm very glad that these rules have come in, but for me, they could go further. I would legitimately say probably up until the age of 16, if not 18, that I would look at limiting headers, because at the end of the day, the body doesn't stop developing until what, I think it's 17, 18. So it's one of them ones. Whilst the body is developing, it does need protecting at the same time. So it's one of them ones. I would say, I mean, Kevin Kilban, I could not disagree with him anymore, because him saying, we shouldn't be dictated. He's like, oh yeah, we shouldn't be dictated to by America, which is basically what he's coming out with. It's like, dude, like a broken needle, kid, you've missed the point. I think Kilban has actually completely missed the point. It's not about hold on, I just want to get Kilban's quote, because it's a case of, I said, I think he really has actually missed the point. British players should not be forced to abide by any new rules set in the US. It's like, dude, you've missed the point. That's not what it's about. It's not about, we shouldn't have to abide by rules that they're making. It's not about that. It's one of them ones. It's about the dangers of heading a football. It's about the dangers of concussions. And this is one of them things where pro wrestling's been affected by this. Like, you look back at the Chris Benoit case, that absolute tragedy that happened with Chris Benoit. Concussions were linked to that. You look at Christopher Nowinski, the reason why he had to get out of the wrestling business, and he wasn't even really in it that long. Concussions, post-concussion syndrome. These things are very, very real. And if you're taking multiple impacts to the head, then the accumulation of that can cause damage. I mean, I'm still surprised at how sharp and on the ball Mick Foley is, but he might be an exception to the rule, because he's taken some serious headshots in his career. So it's one of them. Some people are exceptions to the rule, but on the general basis, it is a case of. I mean, children's soccer. It's a case of, if you keep the ball on the ground, and that's to the betterment of the children's game. And this is one of the things that's been brought up in terms of the England national team anyway, and how kids are taught over here. It's one of them ones where the fact of the matter is, it's if you can't header a ball, or if your quality is not predicated on how well you header it, it's a case of, the fact is, you've got to look at other places that you need to develop. So you will get better if you're not being taught for what, if say the 2-3 hours a day that you're taught to header a ball, you use that to improve your technical skill and improve what you do on the deck, then technically you're going to get better as a player. You might not be the best header of the ball, but at the end of the day, you look at how Barca play. They play a lot of their stuff on the floor. Dortmund, Bayern Munich, same thing. A lot of the real quality teams play a lot of their stuff on the ground and only go to the air when they need to. So, I mean, these kind of rules basically helping safeguard children. That's what it's all that. That should be the main focus. And you know what? One thing I do respect about the lawsuit that was raised in America is that they are actually not looking. They're actually not looking for any kind of monetary compensation. That for me is a very, very important thing. They were actually not looking for any sort of monetary gain out of it, which for me is like, right, cool, you are doing this for the right reasons. So they've got medical advice as well. Obviously, they've got medical advice, and the US Soccer Federation recommending a ban for headers 10 and under and limits for players between 11 and 13. And also, I think for me, the biggest part of this, having medical professionals rather than coaches make decisions on whether players suspected of concussions can remain in games. I think that's the biggest point. Because a medical professional who is trained in that field should be looking for concussion. Not someone who's a car mechanic who works up the road. You wouldn't want him doing a triple heart bypass, would you? So to people like to guys like, say, Jose Mourinho, for instance, let the professionals do their job and keep your nose the hell out of it. That's my thought on it. At the end of the day, having a HCP present at all development and academy matches and making all decisions regarding head injuries, brilliant. That's a great move. I think that should permeate all of football. Because Gezzie Fizzle, as you said, about young children and professionals having longer careers, I would say longer and healthier careers. I would say open it out, like longer. This is about people having longer and healthier lives as well. Yeah,
no, I have to agree with you. And you also raised another interesting point earlier. But, you know, overall, as I personally don't see any issue with it. You know, this is really for the betterment of the sport. And as you say, if you have a healthcare professional making those kinds of decisions as to whether or not a player can play or not, because this is what's interesting, right? We go back to Dr. Eva Cañero and a whole saga surrounding her. She's a healthcare professional, right? If anyone would know more about the extent of the potential injury, so on and so forth, it would be her, right? So you take her advice in that matter. I mean, even with Daniel Sturridge at the moment, right? If some reports to be believed, and honestly, I think Jurgen Klopp's been taken out of context in a lot of things, right? Where he's talking about pain and Daniel Sturridge. But again, when you're talking about these injuries, you got to go with the advice of the healthcare professional.
Of course.
Right? At the end of the day, like, yes, you know, it's a team sport. Sports, you know, they bring people together and everything else, and winning and is important and blah, 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 and all that other stuff. But let's, you know, take sport out of it for a minute and say that we're actually dealing with other human beings. Right? So if we take out the sport element, take out the team element and everything else, and we're dealing with other human beings, what do we want? Right? Right? If we go run them into the ground, they're of no good to anyone. Right? Whereas if we give them the best possible care, right, all of that entertainment that they provide, that, you know, make us so happy and everything else, they're able to continue to do that. Right? It's when we decide that the game itself, whether it's an individual game or the sport overall, is bigger than them, right, where everybody loses. And it's only now, after several years, decades, right, of different practices, where now we're saying, actually, no, we need to look at these things. Right? Imagine some of our greatest sports stars, as you say, not just having longer, healthier careers, but longer, healthier lives as a result of something like this being implemented earlier.
I mean, for me, that is what it should be. That is what it should be all about, and which is why this American lawsuit is so important. Because then those rules, instead of Kevin Kilbane saying, we shouldn't have to abide by any rules that the Americans have imposed on themselves, it's like, that's why I'm saying he's missed the point. It's a case of, why not, instead of having that kind of attitude, why not look at it as, okay, they've changed their rules. They've used solid medical reasoning to change those rules. Let's see if we can take those rules and apply it to our game and help improve our game. Why not look at it that way rather than just shooting it down and saying, why should we have to abide by their rules? Because for me, I said it's not about that. But the fact of the matter is, football is an unscrupulous sport, and it's a case of, I can't remember who said it. But I think Scott Steiner actually quoted it in early 2001. I think it was the night after Sin. So we're talking mid-January. So it was one that he was like, you know what, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. And that's how football is at the moment. But and I was actually talking to Shiloh about this, about footballers are basically like cattle, and there's the whole slaves argument too. But it's one of them ones, they're basically like cattle. One of them ones, as soon as one is not useful to a club, they put them out the pasture. And you wonder why there's not much player loyalty around. It's one of them ones. Like, look at how people have turned on Wayne Rooney. So it's kind of like, hey, if he was to leave tomorrow, he could turn around and say, well, you lot were saying I was crap anyway, so what's your beef? So, but I mean, coming back to the original point, it's a case of it's one of them ones where we do have to start safeguarding people, because there is a life after football. There is a life after American football, a life after professional wrestling. Most people may not think about that because they're just thinking about the here and now in the short term, but there is life after it. And if you want to be living well and living comfortably, you've got to put safeguards into place so that you're not in pain all the time, or you're not like on pain pills all the time because you're trying to manage pain. That's not what life's about. You should be able to live it free and injury free and nice and comfortably. So it is one of them ones where it's like, I said that there is so much in terms of bigger picture kind of things that need to be looked at in this sort of situation, where it's like you can't just look at the small side. You've got to look at it. You've got to look at the kind of bigger scale stuff. But it is kind of what it is, really. But I mean, as I said, I am glad that this American lawsuit went through and it was settled and the rule changes are coming through, because it's positive. It's positive for everyone involved. So it's one of them. It is one of them where I said I just think it's a good thing. I think it's nothing but good. Nothing but good can come from it. And at the end of the day, I'm hoping at the end of the day at the end of the day, it is one of them ones where it is one of them ones where, for me, the fact of the matter is, I said I am glad that this I am very, very glad that the lawsuit has gone through how it has and rules have been changed. But hey, it is one of them ones. I mean, was it Ryan Sonley? You back with us? Ryan?
Yeah, I'm back with you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you wanted to jump in on this topic as well.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I agree with banning it for under 16s, but in a way I don't agree with it, because if they go to play professional football, they're going to think that they're going to get penalised for headering a ball.
But then that's where teaching comes into it, because and where that becomes important, because at the end of the day, if you tell the children from a young age why they're not allowed to header the ball, then it's a case of they'll understand, and they'll take that understanding on. In my view, anyway.
Yeah, but if they head a ball when they become a professional player, they're going to think that, oh, I couldn't header a ball when I was a youngster, so what's the difference now?
No, but I said that's where the teaching becomes important. So if they're taught right, and if they're taught right, you can't header a ball, and this is why. Then it's one of them was the kids. They will grow up knowing why they can't header it and knowing the implications of it, so that when they get older, they won't think, oh, I'm going to get penalised for this. It'll be like, right, I'm over the certain age, now I can do this. It's like driving. It's like driving. You're not gonna tell a kid at like 8, 9, 10 years old, no, you can't. It's like, no, you can't drive. You can't drive. It'd be like, you can drive, but you have to be a certain age, and then you have to go and do your test. So if you teach your kids that from early, then there's the understanding that when they reach a certain age, they can do certain things. That's the way I would see it. But I mean, how important? I mean, Ryan, how important do you think this rule is going to be in terms of the future of football, not just in the United States, but if stuff starts filtering through over here as well?
Well, I don't think it'll intrigue over to any other country, but to be honest, I think that it is a good rule. I mean, it'll keep. I mean, coaching staff of any football team like to keep the ball on the deck anyway, so I mean it's going to help that. So I mean that some teams like playing in triangles, squares, getting it around players. So I can see where people are coming from on this point, but I think it's going to be a good idea for the youngsters. But hopefully they can, if the youngsters become professionals, actually be able to take upon it and actually get taught how to header a ball.
But I think in terms of headering a ball, hey, it's one of them ones. It seems like with the concussion rules, the best time to teach someone how to header a ball is when their body is fully developed. And I think that's one of the kind of bottom lines of this lawsuit, is that don't be having kids headering a ball because of the damage it can cause to a brain and a skull that is not fully developed. And that's one of the most important kind of bottom lines to take from this. But
I mean, I'm a coaching staff member of my local team, and I mean, I wouldn't even ask kids to header a ball. I mean, I've got a cousin who's not even 7, and he's playing for his local team, and he plays in goal, and I wouldn't even ask him to header a ball. So I mean, I'd obviously want youngsters to develop and be able to progress.
Yeah, and I mean, I said that is one of the bottom lines. It's about not only increasing longevity, but getting people to progress and develop as well. So,
I mean, I'm one of a good headers of the ball in my club, and people respect that. I mean, and then there's others that can't header a ball because they're scared of it, and I mean, they'll try, but I mean, there's people don't have the confidence in headering a ball all the time.
But then I said earlier, that's where good teaching comes in. So it's one of them, developing confidence is part of being a good man manager, really. I mean, we've seen examples of that in football over the years as well. So teaching, management, it's all a rich tapestry in terms of creating, not creating, it's probably the wrong word, but developing great players and great people at the end of the day. Similar to Motivate Sports and Fitness with Samir Sawney's Pitch Talk Meets episode, where we talked at length about that, about the work that they do, not only developing players but developing people. And therein is where the important point comes in. So, you know, we do have a caller on the line. Caller, you're through to your Monday Night Football and Fix Pitch Talk. Who have we got the pleasure of speaking to?
It's Tom again.
Cool. I'm guessing you're hanging around for stuff of the week.
Yeah.
Cool.
What's the talking point at the minute, anyway?
At the moment, we are actually talking about the recent rule change in US football. US football about banning of headering the ball in football matches for players under the age of 11 and limiting the amount of headers about the amount of headers for 11 to 13-year-old players as well. That rule change. So it's one of them was due to the impact and concerns about the impact of concussions. So it's one of them was a very interesting point.